Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. We have two somewhat different topics today, but both interesting and businesses you don't get to hear about too often. Later on in the show, we're going to hear about the fast-growing Rhode Island mushroom company, which is doing just that, growing mushrooms, and they have some big expansion plans, and they're getting a lot of attention. We're going to hear about why. But right now, I'm very pleased to be joined by Eric Moffett. Eric is the president of Seaview Transportation Company. They run the Seaview Railroad, which is down at Quonset, the old naval yard that is now a thriving business park. So, Eric, thanks for being here.
Oh, great to be here.
So, I gave a little preview there, but tell us a little more about what exactly you do at Seaview Transportation.
Well, on a day-to-day basis, what we do is we handle the rail transportation within the business park. So cars come in from all over the country. Every night comes into our rail yard, and then we distribute them out throughout the park. So we're delivering raw goods, raw products for the businesses in Quonset Business Park.
So you're kind of like the internal transportation. You're the RIPTA for just Quonset. You're the internal transportation network to get things around. Because people don't realize it's a pretty big site down there. People haven't been to Quonset. It's not like everything's just next door to each other.
Oh, it is. I mean, the park itself is over 3,000 acres. The rail line itself also is 14 miles. So within that business park, there's 14 miles of railroad. So we are the RIPTA of the business park, as you want to say. But what we do is we can provide specialized services. So we work with our customers closely and provide the needs that they have on a daily basis. So we're actually like a customized transportation.
That's a good point, because RIPTA's coming at a certain time. You have to be there for them, but you're deciding with the companies when do you need the train to arrive and take it out, right?
Exactly, and that really helps the companies deal with their, the flow of goods in and out of their facilities. So we really work with them in that way.
Now I know NORAD, which is the car company, they're a big client for you guys. What else are you spending a lot of time moving on? A ton of cars come in down there.
Oh, a ton of cars come in there. A lot of lumber. You'll see at the retail stores, we bring in a lot of lumber, plastics for food grade products. Food, we bring in a lot of food, and then home heating products too. So we keep Rhode Island warm.
So it's going to sound a little old school to people, right? They think, we're reading about driverless cars, trains. That's the 1800s, early 1900s. That's how but it's still the right way for transportation to do transportation for goods in Quonset. And actually, often they continue on rail lines, right? You're connecting them out to the Province Worcester Railroad.
Sure.
So why does rail still make sense in these industrial uses where your expertise is?
Well, the good thing about rail is each rail car takes 4 trucks off the highway. So like if you go to a big box store and you want to buy bulk, what we provide is bulk transportation. So if you want to put 4 trucks on one rail car, we can handle it. So it's a lower cost transportation product, reduces congestion off the highways, and we can reach all over the United States. We bring in cars from Canada, from Mexico, from Seattle, from LA, from Florida. So cars, products all over the country come into Rhode Island through our rail network.
So you take them out of Quonset and you connect up. What's sort of the route the trains take? They get out of Quonset, and then where do they go from there?
Sure, from there they'll go through Providence. You'll see our trains through Providence, Woonsocket, up to Blackstone Valley, to Worcester, and then from there all over the country. They go out to Albany, and then and move on to Chicago, Florida, Texas, all over.
How strong is train, freight, and cargo transportation in America these days? How big a deal is it? I think Warren Buffett also often speaks very positively about it as a business.
Well, he actually owns a railroad, so it is strong. I mean, it's a growing, it's a growing industry. I mean, employees are increasing. I mean, we're increasing, so it's still a strong part of America. It's the backbone. It's the basics, right? Everyone talks about cell phones and all this fun stuff, but this is basic transportation. We still need to get goods from point A to point B, and the railroad is one of the most efficient ways of doing it.
Yeah, your phone doesn't have the good on it. You have to click something, and somebody has to then get it there.
Right.
So you bought Seaview in 2012, so about 6 years ago from when we're taping now. Tell me about what you saw and what was appealing to you to make this your business.
Yeah, I've been in the railroad industry, pretty much all my life. So obviously I have the bug, and I really enjoy it. So there was an opportunity to take over, the business. And the model that the Quonset Development Corporation has down there for business development is second to none. And when you see that model, and connected to a rail network, it really works out well. So I saw a lot of positive growth down there and said, this is, a real good opportunity to take take the railroad from where it was to another level.
Yeah, I think Quonsit's now at maybe 11,000 people are working down there. The last time I checked the statistics out, excuse me. How many of the companies, not a specific number, but how widespread is the use of the rail line among the companies that are down there at Quonset? Are most of them, finding a reason for it? I know some of them are office work, but
I would say a lot of them are office work. But as far as the manufacturing facilities, we probably handle most of the business. So anything that's big industry or has big inventories, we're handling most of those companies.
Can you drive the train, or do you have only the conductors?
No. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course I drive the train.
That must be the fun of owning it.
That is the fun of owning it, is running the train where I can get out of the office. Getting out of the office, though, is sometimes a little bit more difficult.
That's the tough part.
Yeah.
I should say, though, you do more than just run the trains there, because you also have a contract. You can do repairs on trains, including some of the MBTA commuter rail trains at the moment is a contract you have.
That's exactly right. So the MBTA comes in and out of the state of Rhode Island. So the state of Rhode Island, the Rhode Island DOT has a great relationship with the MBTA and their folks. So we were able to parlay that relationship into doing some repair work. So we do kind of contract work, the off stuff, not the normal regular repairs, but we do different things, working with different vendors. So yeah, we've done a lot of different things down there, repairing cars
and there's
for
always
the T.
plenty of repair work waiting to be done with the MBTA. So that's a good business to be in. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Eric Moffett about Seaview Transportation, and later on we'll get the scoop on mushrooms. Maybe scoop some mushrooms. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nacey. Later on in the show, we're going to hear about the business of fungi. We're going to hear about the business of growing mushrooms, the Rhode Island Mushroom Company, which is growing quickly and getting a lot of attention. We're going to hear about their business model. But right now, I'm pleased to continue the conversation with Eric Moffett. He is the president of Seaview Transportation Company. And as we were talking about in the first half, they run the Seaview Railroad, which carts a ton of the cargo and freight that's going on down at Quonset. And we should say, I think, you're using rail lines that they date back. They were originally installed for the Navy, right? When the Navy base was there.
1939.
This is still that original track and stuff. Is it all still there?
Oh no! When the Navy was here, there was probably over 40 miles of railroad within that industrial park. So it's been pared down quite a bit. And obviously through the years you replace things, but there's it's the leftover from the Navy.
And I think there was a fairly big investment. Taxpayers put some money into the rail infrastructure in like the 1990s. Why was that important? What did that do for the rail infrastructure to make Quonset kind of hum?
Well, what was good is with the electrification coming from Amtrak, that kind of made it a little bit more restrictive for rail freight. Passenger freight sometimes doesn't always mix, but that investment that the state had made in the federal government, working with Rhode as well, really made it possible to bring higher capacity cars down to Quonset. So it really made the next level of a business for Quonset. So it was a great investment.
And the growth, I think I saw some numbers. I mean, you're doing the number of carloads you're doing now way up from a decade or two ago, right?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, when the railroad first started, there were 600 rail cars that was moved by Seaview. That was 1978. This year we moved over 7,000 rail cars.
That's like a tenfold increase in the last few decades.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. So people probably thought railroads were going away at the time, and they didn't.
They aren't, and that's the fun part about the rail industry. It's the industry that people really don't know kind of is out there. But we're out there at night moving cars around while you're out sleeping. But yeah, the growth has been phenomenal. And what that shows is that Rhode Island's the right place to have a business, and that the railroad network is still strong. So industry is still growing. Business is still growing in Rhode Island. I mean, I could not grow our railroad if it wasn't for the growth of the industry.
Yeah, because you're serving other businesses need to be here for you to serve. Yeah. So I got to ask you, I grew up with model trains. My dad's collected Lionel, still has them. We go to the train shows sometimes. Were you a train buff as a kid? Did you always love this?
This is where it started, the train around the Christmas tree. What else, right? And I said, one day I want to drive that train. So my dad used to take me to different trains all across New England, and then I had an opportunity to get involved in the rail industry, and the rest is history, as I say.
And here you are. You've also been doing this is interesting, the passenger train service to the air show each year, which has been, by all accounts, a big success and has cut down on the crazy car traffic that we were seeing with that a few years ago. That's been pretty popular, right?
That's been very popular. I mean, it shows you what, working again with, the folks at the DOT, the National Guard, the Quonset Business Park, also, all of us working together, to make this happen, shows that, when you have the right commuter service, the right times that works with folks, that people will ride the train. I mean, these trains to the plains has actually taken off over 1,200 cars on the weekend. I mean, when you take 1,200 cars off the highway, get people out of their car and into trains, that's a great thing.
A huge difference, yeah. I also want to ask you about passenger rail on Aquidneck Island. You run I think it's the Newport and Narragansett Bay Railroad.
Absolutely.
And could you imagine a stepped up use? You think of how crowded the island gets, especially in the summertime. Could you see a place for a stepped up amount of passenger rail on Aquidneck Island? Is that too possible, or is it just too developed to do much more?
No, I think there is. The whole reason, I mean, there's two faults to, to answer that question. I mean, the whole reason why the railroad still exists in Aquidneck Island is to maintain that rail infrastructure. Once you lose it, it's gone. So since the state has taken over control of that, again, back in the 70s, there's always been continuous operations to run that. The state of Massachusetts has really dedicated large sums of money to run commuter trains to Fall River. They claim in 2020, 2022 that they'll run trains to Fall River.
And they've been claiming every 4 years.
They've been claiming
since
that,
the
but
90s, yeah.
they've been moving forward, and that line connects to that Fall River. So there could be a possibility to connect it. That's a long-term stretch. Short-term, we're actually looking at maybe doing some rail shuttles to satellite parking lots on the island because of the congestion, because of the change in the Pell Bridge realignment. We're actually in contact with some folks that come up with some ideas to how do we run a local shuttle, a mile or two. But just to get people from outside of downtown Newport off the Pell Bridge so they're not stuck, waiting in line to get off the exit to utilize the train service that we have in Aquidneck Island would be really good. And I think that's a short-term situation that we can really get involved in and get our hands around.
That'd be pretty wild. You could take the train from Newport to Boston again, back to the future.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One other question to go, we're running low on time, but you've served on the advisory committee for the Rhode Island State Rail Plan, which is the plan the DOT does every couple of years, look at how to do rail and how to make it good. People have been critical of the Wickford station and saying, I don't know if that was a good investment. That MBTA station, there's not a lot of use down there. Do you have any thoughts of, you were just talking about how to get people on commuter rail, what might make that investment pay off more that the state put in? Well,
I think there's two things, again, to look at the Wickford station. One, I think that was a great investment. That will be an investment that pays off long term. I mean, it was built with dollars, in 2010, 2011 dollars, and I think we'll be benefiting that for years to come. A great thing to look at is what the state of Connecticut's doing. So if the Rhode Island folks could, as a commuter rail, kind of marry what they're doing, provide an intrastate service, I think Wickford really could, take off. And the state of Connecticut is starting a new service, and again, it's intrastate rail service that connects to New Haven to go to New York. If we can develop some type of intrastate network, I think ourselves, that would connect through Providence to Boston, I think we'll kind of hit a lot of folks. I think that's when Wickford Station will really come into its stride. So I really think it's a positive. It was a good investment at the time for the future. And we've done it with better dollars. I think if we did it 5 years from now, the cost would be, more. And then we would say, is the feasibility really there? By building it when it was, and building a train service around that, looking at what other states have done, I think Wickford really takes off. Well,
we'll check back with you in 2050 to see if your prediction was right on that one.
All right. I'll still be running trains.
Absolutely, I believe it. I'm going to take a ride with you. Eric Moffett, president of Seaview Transportation, thanks for joining me. But don't go away, because coming up next, we're going to talk to the head of the Rhode Island Mushroom Company. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. So from farm to our table today, we are here with Michael Hallock. He is the CEO and co-founder of the Rhode Island Mushroom Company, and we have some examples we're going to talk about in a minute about their wares and what they do there. Mike, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So first, people might have a guess, but tell us a little about what you do at the Rhode Island Mushroom Company.
Rhode Island Mushroom Company was founded 5 years ago, and back then we grew 40 pounds of mushrooms.
Now in a closet, right?
In a closet, yeah, at Sweetberry Farm in Middletown. But since then, we've grown to a much larger facility, and now we grow close to 30,000, or we sell close to 30,000 pounds of mushrooms a week.
A week?
Yeah.
That's a lot of mushrooms.
It is, yeah.
So tell me about what we're looking at here, what the varieties and everything we have on our table with us.
So we've got a bunch of varieties here, and I'll kind of go through them quickly.
Yeah.
But we've got golden oysters, which I love. They're beautiful. Blue oysters, Pia Pino, lion's mane, as you can look.
I see the name.
Dr. Seuss mushroom. Maitake, which is my favorite mushroom over here.
Yep.
And then we've got a few shimiji down here, shiitake that everyone knows, and then king oysters, and then a variety of different packs you can find at all the Whole
it's a
Foods.
more beautiful basket than I might have guessed for mushrooms, right? It's part of this reminding people that like mushrooms are more than just those little slices that you might throw into your chicken marsala or something when you're making it at night.
Absolutely. One of the things we've noticed over the years is people are just getting more into mushrooms, and we've seen a huge change even since we started the company. But They are beautiful. There are beautiful things, and there's so many of them in the woods. If you walk out in the woods, there's so much variety. So we've found the edible ones, right? And not us specifically, but we grow the edible ones, and they're beautiful.
Probably important to check that they're the edible ones before you start selling 30,000 pounds.
Right.
So I believe you guys have said you believe you're now the fastest growing agricultural entity in Rhode Island. Is that right?
Yeah, most likely. I mean, I think that's probably true. It's hard to put our finger on it, but. Yes.
So I think, if I understood, as I was reading up on you guys, some of the mushrooms are done in Pennsylvania, some are in Rhode Island. What's the plan? You do have Rhode Island in the name. Do you expect over time more and more of the mushroom, the growing will happen here? What's the thinking there?
So what we do, when we started the company, we realized the infrastructure cost for an indoor ag farm was exorbitant, right? It's a big cost. So what we did was we grew a conservative size farm to grow the high-end exotics, so the things like the gold oysters and the blue oyster mushrooms, to do a better job with those. And then we found partners in Pennsylvania to grow us the more commodity-style mushrooms, always with the intention of building a large facility in the Northeast.
How expensive is it to have, or maybe expensive is the wrong word because that sounds like just about money, but how big of an infrastructure do you need to do? In some ways you think of this as like, oh, you could have your back garden or something,
Sure.
But to do it at the scale you're trying to do, how much of an infrastructure do you need to grow these, the types you have, and then in the amount that restaurants and places need?
So the way it makes sense financially is it's large scale. So we've just submitted a proposal to the Innovation Campus, and that's a 59-acre facility. So there's a lot of pieces that go into something like that, and we've tried to be innovative in a way that includes energy in our programs. We're also planning on growing other vegetables as well. So that's has a huge impact on the bottom line. And you have really the size facility we put a bid out for, which is 2.5 million square feet, is the smallest we were willing to do.
Wow. So that's, and so as you allude to there, this is the, people might remember on the ballot in 2016, voters okayed $20 million to seed some innovation campus. Now they've opened it up to proposals, and you guys have one of them. It's actually, and it's much bigger than that, $115 million you're looking at for that facility you just talked about.
Yes. Yeah, it's a $115 million facility. On that facility, we'd have an agricultural innovation center where URI would do multiple different aspects of whether there be apprenticeships, classwork, things like that. We'll have our offices there, and we'll be growing salad greens, tomatoes, and cucumbers and mushrooms. So about 31 million pounds of food per year will be produced in that
so
facility.
There's some wild numbers, man. Yeah. And I think you're planning to use 59 acres on the Peckham Farm site that you
Yeah, and just to eliminate any confusion, where Peckham Farm sits right now, it's actually on, I believe, like a 300 or 400 acre plot. So there's a lot of land on that site. So it's behind the current Peckham Farm, so it wouldn't affect the operation.
Wouldn't take it all over.
There.
Okay.
Right.
So, I'll give you, some people might say, well, wait a minute, I thought the Innovation Campus would be, some digital thing or some advanced manufacturing and, robots, I don't know, something like that. What would be your pitch that agriculture is where the state should should place its bet for this project?
So a part of our proposal is this company called Genomics. Genomics is a genomics company based at Yale. They are the rock stars of the genomic world. So they're finding ways of producing...
Some people might not know. Remind them what genomics is.
So genomics is essentially the study of plant science and genetics to produce crops that, whether they had higher protein, different vitamins in them. There's been a lot of successes overseas and in the United States. But we have to start thinking about things like that if we're going to solve some of the problems we're facing. For instance, one of the things we're working on is a white button mushroom with a higher protein level. So what that could potentially cause is you get an umami source. So umami is a flavor type similar to meat, right? That has higher protein levels. So that could reduce the amount of beef that we're growing out west and potentially lower the CO2 emissions.
Yeah, because a lot of carbon associated, more than people might think with beef and stuff.
Well, and that's another aspect of what we're doing here. So we are actually producing our own power using a cogen plant on this facility. And doing that, we're actually capturing the CO2 off-put by the cogen plant and cleaning it and using it in our production. Another off-put of that is heat. So we'll have limitless heat to put into our greenhouses, which is a huge expenditure in growing plants.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's a gardening, it's a form of, it's that, you're cultivating.
Right.
I want to ask you, about a decade ago, I remember years ago when I was a business newspaper reporter, I remember doing sort of the big bump in local farms when the Census of Agriculture came out. And the numbers had gone up a huge amount. And since then, there's been so much buzz around the local food scene in Rhode Island. And I'm just curious how you describe, as someone in the thick of it, the state of agriculture and the food industry in in Rhode Island, maybe in New England more broadly?
So I think a great example is the fact that we're successful. I don't think we could have been successful anywhere else, and I really believe that. There's a few factors there. One is that there's such a supportive community. I can call the director of ag or anytime I want, right? I can reach out to Stephen Pryor at Commerce, and you can't do that in every other state, right? So there's that, and there's also such a supportive restaurant and consumer community. Everyone really cares about where their food's coming from. So, and we're also so close to New York and Boston, so there's huge markets in this area. So we've had, we've been very successful, I think, because of where we're located. It's a huge factor.
I've heard there are a few restaurants in New York City, just a couple. So people are going to see this and wonder, well, maybe I want to try one of their mushrooms. Where will they find your goods and wares?
So our products are available at 110 Whole Foods stores north of New Jersey. You can buy them at Belmont and Wakefield, but also multiple farmers markets in Rhode Island as well.
And what's your favorite way to eat mushrooms? What do you recommend? Someone's going to say maybe they're getting hungry as they watch the show tonight to figure out dinner. They're thinking, what should I make? What do you think is the best way to use mushrooms as the expert?
So again, my favorite mushroom is maitake. So that's this mushroom variety right here, and I'll pull it out and show you. So this varietal right here, maitake, I like to pull them apart like...
Now hold it up a little for the folks at home.
I like to pull it apart like broccoli and make these broccoli-sized florets, you can see.
Yep.
And then I toss it with olive oil.
Okay.
And throw it on a sheet pan, roast it at 400 degrees, and you get them nice and crispy. Salt and pepper when they come out, and once you try them, I've given them away at farmers markets to have people try them.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, actually. Yeah. I should also ask about, you mentioned the Commerce Corporation. They're actually doing that innovation campus thing which you're in, but you got a $325,000 loan from their small business assistance program in 2017. What did you need the loan for? What did you use the proceeds for, and why was that program appealing and helpful to your company?
So we've used the proceeds to upgrade our offices. We bought a large walk-in packaging machine, packaging room. So it really updated our infrastructure, and a big piece to what we are. We've been growing over 100% annually. So since we started, it's been very hard cash flow. So it was great to have them come in and give us a hand with that. Bottom line, we wouldn't be here without many of these things along the way. There was a LASA grant we received back 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not sure, are you familiar with the LASA grant?
No, I'm not.
So it was a small amount, $10,000 that we received 4 years ago. And without that, we wouldn't be here. Without certain things along the way, we wouldn't be here.
Oh, LASA, that's the Local Agriculture Seafood Act.
You got
okay,
it. Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I must know about that. Yeah, okay. So those smaller things really have paid off to help your company get where it is now.
I think both for us, but also for the state. The proposal that we're planning is it's going to potentially create 275 jobs right down in Kingston. So a small investment like that over the last 5 years, but by the state, could turn into something huge like this.
So it sounds like you're pretty bullish on the food scene generally here. You're like your company, but as part of a larger what's happening. Yeah,
I've tried to lead by example, and be a part of decisions that are being made, at state level. So I'm on the Rhode Island Food Policy Council with many different people that, it's a great place to both learn and add our opinion to the mix.
All right, so viewers, keep eating, have some mushrooms. Try that. I'm going to try that recipe. I'm going to get my wife, who's better cook than I am, to try that recipe. But thank you so much for being with us, Michael Hallock. It's the Rhode Island Mushroom Company. You can find their stuff, he said, in Whole Foods and farmers markets and other stores, and they have a website too online if you want to check it out. In the meantime, we'll see you back here next week on Executive Suite.